Arsenal have now entered the race for his signature. What's the latest with Bradley Barcola's future?
Yeah, at the time we're live, Arsenal haven't entered the race in terms of going to PSG, but they appreciate Bradley Barcola, and he'll be an option, no doubt, that they discuss after missing out on Vinicius Jr. But let's see whether they decide to also put themselves into the mix, because the challenge is if they do, PSG get a bidding war between two Premier League clubs in an inflated market, and suddenly the price may not drop. Barcola wants Liverpool, but let's say Arsenal outbid Liverpool, then I don't think he'll say, okay, I'm going to stay at PSG, because he's not going to sign a new deal. And really key to Barcola is not Liverpool versus potentially Arsenal. It's just about playing a bit of a waiting game, because PSG have already brought in Magnus Akliouche. You've got Gertz at Ajax, who they're negotiating for, and then a deal with Ferran Torres, who scored the winning goal in the World Cup final, is really close now, and the expectation is that the sale might happen at some point this week between Barcelona and PSG for somewhere in and around 50 million euros. And suddenly you've got this wave of attackers coming in, all relatively versatile, and maybe PSG feel there's no point digging in on this 170 million euros number, because they will need an outgoing as well. And I think Liverpool's tactic is basically wait it out, as they did with Alexander Isak, play on the fact that as of now, the player wants to join and broad personal terms are in place, and then hope once PSG, for example, get Ferran Torres over the line, that number comes down and it's the right time to place a formal bid. In the meantime, if Arsenal go gung-ho and outbid Liverpool, then who knows what might happen, but we're not there yet, and this is why Liverpool still feel in control of the Bradley Barcola situation. They just have to wait it out a bit.
So Miles Lewis-Skelly wants to stay at Arsenal. That's according to James McNicholas, also known as Gunnerblog of The Athletic. Obviously one of the best news sources we could possibly get for Arsenal updates. And that is going to make us feel a lot better, because we don't want to lose Miles Lewis-Skelly. But it just makes me ask the question, where is this all coming from? What's been going on here? I've got a theory, we'll talk about it, but let's go through the news in some detail first. Here's Gunnerblog's report. Miles Lewis-Skelly wants to stay at Arsenal and is fully focused on establishing himself in Mikel Arteta's first team plans for the upcoming season. Interest from elsewhere, but Lewis-Skelly is happy at Arsenal and not exploring a move. I find this update very, very interesting. I'll tell you why in a second, but let me just read you a few more lines quickly from the actual article itself. He wants to stay, establish himself, as said in the tweet. The 19-year-old's performances have attracted interest from elsewhere, but he's happy at Arsenal, not exploring a move away. Instead, the Arsenal Academy graduates' attention is on the challenge of competing for regular first-team football. He signed a new contract last year. He started regularly in pre-season, and it's understood that the club are not actively offering the England international for sale. Equally, there are expected to be departures for Arsenal between now and the end of the transfer window, and the club are conscious that they may have to be flexible in their plans. So, I said, okay, the first thing to say is maybe all this was a load of rubbish, and a lot of you in the comments of my video a few hours ago said, James, TalkSport, a Chelsea journalist, there's nothing to this. And I said, listen, firstly, let's respect that other sources have been right on things. One of the sources, linked to that story, I believe to not be someone who comes out with information very willy-nilly. So I actually still believe that there's truth to that reporting. I actually believe that there has been something behind the scenes around a potential move for Miles Lewis-Skelly being explored. Whoever the instigator of this is, Arsenal Football Club, the potential buying clubs, or the agents, which a lot of you theorised, I actually believe those conversations have been there. Though the reporting from Gunnerblog and The Athletic very much says he doesn't want to leave, Arsenal aren't offering him out, so what's going on? Well, some of you might say, well, then it must be the agents. Well, I don't think it is, because for it to come out, and you don't often get this from The Athletic, like very quick rubbishing of other reports, and not rubbishing's harsh, but very quickly saying, listen, let's just quickly tidy up what's going on and put this out there. It feels to me like the message is, this isn't Lewis-Skelly's doing. He wants to stay, and all the theorising, because I asked on X, why does everyone think, and my question is to all of you as well in the comments of my last video, why does everyone think this is agent-led? Why does everyone think this is driven? I kind of get where people are coming from, but I never interpreted it that way. I always interpreted it as, no, Arsenal have Zubimendi, Rice, Bruno Guimaraes, Marino, Eze, Ødegaard, and maybe Waneri, who could all play in central midfield. And actually, they probably don't think there's any room for Miles Lewis-Skelly and are seeing if there is a potential buyer and just exploring, like they are with buyers, exploring players they want to buy, exploring potential sales. That was kind of the way I'd interpreted all of it. Not that Arsenal were actively trying to sell, but maybe weren't sort of, we're trying to have clubs believe that there is a deal that could be done there. Then a lot of people pushed back and said this must be agent-led. I really think this is a move to make it very, very clear. This isn't coming from Miles Lewis-Skelly's side. This isn't coming from his agents. He's happy at Arsenal. He wants to compete. He's committed to Arsenal Football Club. I feel like this is a move to kind of make that very, very clear. But what's been put in the report is Arsenal aren't actively trying to sell either.
Ben, is there anything else that we haven't touched on here that's got your juices flowing?
Plenty getting my juices flowing in this window. The swap deal between Dwight McNeil and Brennan Johnson, very interesting because it's good old-fashioned, no cash involved, and both of those players...
Is there nothing involved at all? It's literally just a swap. Is that it?
Yeah, just a swap.
So I can't remember the last time... You might be able to tell me. I can't remember the last time this happened, and they are so rare.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember either in the Premier League era too many of them. Not when you've had a straight no cash swap as opposed to maybe two players and a little bit of cash on one side. And you can look at it and say, Brennan Johnson was a club record signing at the time. Okay, he was eclipsed quite soon by Jørgen Strand Larsen, but he only joined Palace recently. Yeah. They paid a lot of money for him, and Dwight McNeil market valuation is less, but it's just down to the fact that Johnson hasn't worked at Palace. Palace wanted Dwight McNeil in January, but paperwork proved a stumbling block right at the last minute when the player thought the move was agreed. Right. So this is just a deal that suits all parties, but it's a fascinating one, and let's see whether this type of deal comes back into the kind of modern football trend. Obviously, most clubs don't want to do it, because if they're under FFP, they're judged under these new UEFA rules where you basically do two separate deals and you can book profit each deal on your financial accounts as long as you leave a gap of 45 or more days, which is kind of why Morgan Rogers came in, and then Alejandro Garnacho was alone with a conditional obligation because it circumvents the 45-day window. Doing this kind of swap deal might make football sense, but it's not always as palatable financially speaking, and that's why it's kind of gone out of fashion, but it's quite refreshing, I think.
Indeed. Ben, you're refreshing. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Thanks a lot.
Catch up soon. TalkSport senior football correspondent Ben Jacob, the businessman in sport this summer. As long as it continues, we will hear from him.